Welcome, everybody, to Victory Outdoors, the podcast. It's been a while. We're happy to be back. So we kind of ended up stopping right in the middle of turkey season. We had a weekly podcast. We were rolling right along, having lots of great guests, that kind of stuff. And what ended up happening is we had two back-to-back podcast recordings that, for one reason or another, we had a failure with the application we were using. We had a failure for some of the audio to process. So we had we had the guest audio, but we didn't have my audio, or vice versa. And so I tried to work with the company that we were using to rectify that. But the problem is that we just didn't have the ability to save that information. So we were kind of bummed. And so we weren't sure what was going on. So we ended up stopping because we were right in the middle of turkey season, and we just went ahead and postponed it until we could get it figured out. So we've got it figured out, but today we're actually live on location here in Afton, Iowa, and we are at Full Draw Outfitters, or Full Draw Adventure Outfitters. Full Draw Adventures, they've got a beautiful place here. They've got two lodges that are absolutely beautiful. They have 26,000 acres available to hunt here in southern Iowa, and they have 8,500 square feet of lodging. So lots of beds. And I said that wrong. It's 2,600 acres, not 26,000. I saw Ty look at me like, I think that's a little large. Yeah, so it's 2,600 acres that they have in south to southwest Iowa, Zone 4. They are currently looking for, they do have some openings available this fall. So if you drew a tag, you're out-of-state hunter, or even if you're an in-state hunter, then just looking for an outstanding place to hunt, check out Full Draw Outfitters. Full Draw Adventures. So Full Draw Adventure Outfitters, it's kind of a long name, but they can hook you up. They've got some monsters out here. Actually, Goody got some pretty cool footage not far from here of a monster in a bean field. So, all right, with that, we're going to get started. All right, so today we're going to actually talk about kind of what we do throughout the summer months, maybe even early fall. But I'm going to ask each one of the guys. There's 6 of us here today. There's 10 of us total. But we had a quick team meeting over the last couple of days out here at Full Draw, and kind of a planning type thing, but kind of fun too. We did some shooting and that kind of thing. Shooting our expeditions and kind of getting fine-tuned. But kind of along those lines, this is the time of year we start thinking about planting those late summer food plots. Obviously, trail cameras are starting to really pick up right now. And so I'm just kind of thinking, of talking with each of you guys about what you do in those summer months. And it can be multiple things, but what's the main thing that you think that you do that gets you guys prepared for, the fall? So with that, I'm going to start with Jake Reed. Jake, what do you do, during these summer months to kind of get ready for October and November?
You got to go with the 2 S's. You got to shoot and you got to scout. And scouting, trail cameras and stuff play a big part in that. But I like to walk farms when they're a little bit thicker, and I like to find those pinch points. I like to identify where the food is, where the bedding is, try and get everything pinpointed down a little bit more to where you can really find where those bucks, because we all know that they're kind of predictable in the early season, but as you get later in the season, they're not so predictable. But if you can get the wind directions that you're going to get, which is northwest and southeast here in the Midwest for the most part during the rut, you are going to be able to kind of narrow down those pinch points and where those bucks are going to go and how they're going to get to their does, where their staging areas are going to be. Just different things, and trying to pick up some more ground to hunt.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I think you mentioned there, kind of trying to pattern those early season bucks, man, I've never had good luck doing that. Like, I think I know what they're doing, and then I think, oh, I got a plan put together. I'm going to go out and kill one in early October, and it's going to happen. And I've had situations where I've had good encounters, but some of you guys have had better luck killing one in October. Usually mine all happen. My kills, well, the last couple of years, they've been in late November, like right before gun season. But normally I'm kind of right there in that 2-week window. Very last few days of October, and then the first couple of weeks of November. Is kind of where I would say 85-90% of my bucks have been killed, at least in archery. So I mean, I wish I was better at it, but I mean, I think Garrett, you've killed a few October bucks. You killed one real early, like 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years ago, I killed one on October 3rd. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was like, we went out to shoot does. We usually go the first weekend. Dad and I shoot some does.
Yeah.
Didn't see anything, and that buck walked out.
Yeah.
Like, totally random.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, I think Ian, you were with him, weren't you, when he killed that one on the opening day?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Opening day, that was a couple of years ago. It was raining. It was October 1st, and, Ian and Goody went out and sat on the family farm, and Ian stuck a good one there. And so, I mean, we definitely have been able to do it. That's for sure. And then we've had I know Jake Reed and Drexel, they've killed some good deer in October, a little later in October, not the first week necessarily, but definitely earlier in October, maybe between the 15th and 20th, kind of in those ranges. But how about you, Ty? Have you had any luck early in October, or not so much?
Well, I think the big thing, like, Garrett said that buck showed up random, but, now that I look back and I reflect on that farm, we've been blessed to be able to hunt that farm for the last 12 years.
Yeah.
And just watching trail cam pictures of it as we go through, on that farm last year, we had 2 deer that were over 200 inches.
Wow.
And, and I kept thinking, man, if we can just get in there that first week in October, there might be a chance. And September 30th, one of them walked through the gateway where Garrett killed his deer. And so we were that close. So I think the big thing for us is just, learning your farm and, understanding and looking at where those deer are. So I know on that farm that if there's a chance to kill a big deer that first week in October, that's probably our farm that we need to go to. And we've been able to put food plots in there. And we have, it's just been phenomenal for us. We've been able to build it up the way we want it. And it's 80 acres of timber with, the guy we got it from had 11 food plots in it, and you never knew which food plot to hunt because they were all over the place. And we're down to 3 food plots now. And, and one of them, the clover plot's probably our hottest plot, and it's season long, but they love hitting that clover early season. So that's what I'm learning. I mean, I think you always learn as you're bow hunting. And another farm that we have is we had another giant on there, and Garrett and Drexel actually got velvet footage of him in an alfalfa field right across the fence. I mean, this deer got killed by the neighbor and he scored 217.
Wow.
So, but once again, early season. So I haven't killed one, but I always think I should be able to kill one. I'm like, hey, I got this figured out, and then something, but.
Yeah, the opportunity could present itself as long as you're in the stand. I mean, I think that's one of the things that probably why I haven't is because, I'll go out and kill a doe or two, but I go and hunt the stands that, like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to save that stand for November. And so I purposely stay away from some of the stands that if I'm going out with the intent to kill a doe, I don't necessarily want to kill a doe and then drive all over the place to get the doe out and that kind of thing. So that's probably why is I spend time in early October hunting, but when I do, I'm not necessarily targeting a buck. I'm going out to kill a doe, and maybe that's hurting those odds. But I mean, Ty, you brought up a kind of a good point there about, being able to capitalize on, multiple years on a farm. So you've got multiple years experience, starting to put together those pieces of that puzzle, and realizing that you don't necessarily always have to figure it out, in 1 year. And deer continue for years and for thousands of years have walked the same trails, and that kind of stuff. Sure, they get bumped around, that kind of stuff, but usually a good area is going to stay a good area. You're going to, like you talked about the gate that deer walked through on September 30th. I learned a lot, you said clover, early in the season, using those clover plots, deer, focusing on that. Kind of when the soybeans start to turn yellow, they start to flip over to that green browse and that kind of stuff. And one of the things that I think I learned where I saw that in an actual, obviously you can read it, you can listen about it, hear other podcasters talk about it, and read it in a magazine article, right? But where I actually saw it happen was when I started taking Natalie during youth season. So, in Iowa, a lot of times it's late August, early September that we start to see our soybeans start to change. So we're a solid month out from the archery season. And so they start to switch over to that green browse a solid month before. So they should be fairly well into that pattern. But at some point in time, they start to switch away from that back onto when it starts to get a little colder, they start to move to higher energy type food sources and stuff like that. But what I noticed was hunting with Natalie during youth season, which is usually mid-September through the end of September, we were exclusively hunting alfalfa or green browse food plots. So we were on our clover, we were on our alfalfa, and it was just droves of deer coming out, a lot of does, but there was opportunities on bucks and that kind of stuff. And I'm sure Goody's seen some of that too with his kids when they've taken it out. I mean, as a matter of fact, you guys might have actually capitalized last fall. That was hay ground, hayfield?
Yeah. Just a grass hay field. It was that early muzzleloader, so...
Yeah, that would have been mid-October.
Mid-October.
Yeah. Yep. You guys killed a double. That's the kind of a rarity when it comes to deer hunting, especially when you're gun hunting. I mean, bow hunting's one thing, like stick a couple of bucks, and think you guys are world-class, hunters. Like all of a sudden you're on top of the world. Like, I think Dennis and I have dreamed about that multiple times. Like, yeah, we're going to kill a double. We're going to do it. This year we're going to do it. We'll have this deer come by and then this deer will come by, and we like daydream about it and then it never happens. Yeah, to do it with guns, it's kind of crazy. And then to do it on a farm that you guys own, that your home place there, kind of almost in your backyard essentially, and that's awesome. Especially the caliber of deer you killed. I mean, there were two, for sure. Your buck was, and it came out after Danica killed hers, right? Yeah.
And actually, so we were sitting there, and it was for Danica more. The hunt was.
Yeah.
We almost didn't double. Because, we shot Danica's with a gun, and my first thought was there's not going to be another deer come out after that.
Right.
And I called Ian, let him know. He said, hang out, man. You got 20 minutes of daylight left. Hang out, just sit it out. And it was probably 10 minutes later, my buck came out. And I was like, well, we're here. Got my tag, we're ready to go. So it's kind of a surprise for me, but yeah, it worked out pretty well. And...
yeah,
pretty awesome.
Yours was like it was like in the 160s, wasn't it? Something like that, upper 50s maybe.
Just shy of 60s. I want to say mid upper 50s.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I knew it was a good one, and then hers was a little smaller than that, but still a good buck. I look forward to seeing that episode. So that episode will drop. It'll be one of our early ones. And for everybody listening out there, our fall episodes will start to begin here in August, and we'll start producing those on all of our Carbon TV, Waypoint. We'll put them on our YouTube. If you guys haven't subscribed to the YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to that. We have a growing audience on YouTube, so we're excited about that. It sat dormant. It used to be the main place we put our episodes, and we grew it, early on in our early years, and then it kind of sat dormant. We still put our episodes out there, but YouTube's one of those things. If you don't keep up with the trends and that kind of stuff, you kind of fall in the algorithm hole, if you will. Like, you basically get lost in all of the videos and stuff. But we started doing more shorts and that kind of stuff, and we'll continue to do that, and that's kind of helped get us seen a little bit more on YouTube. But if that's where you watch our videos, you can see us there. But then Carbon TV, Waypoint, those are our main ones. If you watch regular TV and you have the Hunt channel, you can catch us on Friday nights on the Hunt channel. So, but anyway, so let's move on to Drexel. what's your top thing, in those late summer months that you really hone in on?
So for me, really, my top thing that I do during the summer is cameras. Like, I try to scatter cameras out, whether it's 1 to 3 cameras on one farm. I'll just put cameras wherever I can, and it seems like I'm constantly. We'll get to a point here where I'll be driving every night, and I'll be glassing everything I can, and I'll be seeing who's around. Like last year, I mean, I literally had 3 cameras on one farm, and there was 3 or 4 shooters on one farm.
Yeah.
July through late September, I'd say, and I mean, there was literally 2 out of the 4 deer did not show up on camera until after season started. Well, I guess the one didn't even show up. I watched one in July, and I never even saw him on camera once. And I mean, scouting is just probably, I don't know. With your eye, you can see more than your camera, it seems. So scouting is my biggest deal. I like to, number 1, put cameras out. Number 2, go look at the farms from the road. And then, I mean, if it's a new farm that you don't know, that you haven't scouted, shed season, obviously,
Yeah.
go check it out. Go, right now is the time to go look at your stuff, and you get a good idea, and then just maybe put a camera on and then just leave it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I like the the velvet footage and that kind of stuff, and getting out and getting that driving the gravel roads and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think you bring up a good point though, like actually scouting your own farms instead of just aimlessly driving around and looking at other people's deer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, make sure that you pay attention. Like, find a place. The one thing I like, couple of the farms that I hunt, I have areas or locations that may not be on that farm, but I can get access where I can view either a bean field or one of our food plots, and we can actually use get a scouting or a spotting scope and be able to see from a pretty good distance, maybe 400 or 500 yards away, so we're not really putting any undue pressure. The deer don't really necessarily know we're here. They don't get too worried. Like, if you get there before they're out in the field, and you drive in, and then you kind of set up your spotting scope or whatever on a window mount, or even in the bed of your truck, like off of a tripod or something like that. Like, I've been able to, kind of just even just sitting in the truck in the cab of the truck. They don't seem to worry about the truck being there.
as long as you're not driving in.
Yeah, if you're driving in on them, like, then all of a sudden, like, they might clear the field. They'll probably come back out, but you can get there before and kind of sit there, put in your time. Maybe just pick. Okay, I'm just gonna do one farm tonight. I'm gonna sit here, see what comes out, and sit there until dark, and then I'll just drive off. That's been pretty valuable. I mean, we did that a lot for Natalie, trying to find those early season deer and where they were going to be at and that kind of thing. Matter of fact, I think we filmed Fair Game, big buck that Ian killed a couple years ago, in the same year that Natalie killed her giant, but out of that same field. But we never filmed her giant, but we filmed Ian's Fair Game buck, and he came out with 3 other bucks and didn't have a care in the world. We just sat there. We were probably 800 yards away, I bet, from him, but it was a flat field, and on the opposite end of the field, and just watched him. And he came out, walked through the field, and filmed him a little bit. It was a little ways off, so it was kind of not super tight footage and that kind of stuff, but it was a good enough footage that when Ian saw it, he instantly knew which deer it was. And so it was kind of, he had a pretty unique. I think it was the brow tine, right, Goody?
So he had a I think 4 or 5 inch brow tine, but there's a little spur right next to it that was his giveaway.
Yeah. And it kind of changed it, throughout the years. It's funny, we followed that deer for like 4 or 5 years. For sure, 4.
I want to say it was closer to 5.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know for sure. Like, we were actively hunting him for 4. Like I can remember being behind the bow and having him in the field with Ian running the camera. That was probably one of the first encounters we had of footage of him, and it was dark. I remember we actually had you come drive in and spook the deer out of the field before we got out of the stand. and then you had multiple encounters with them with Ian, and Ian had multiple encounters with them. It's a fun deer to chase, but yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely doing that. Do you find yourself sitting on your own properties, watching your own properties, or do you like?
For the most part, I mean,
Yeah.
you'll find deer, of course, everywhere else, but usually, I mean, I'll stop and look and see what it is, but for the most part, I'm just kind of it's quick, quick glimpse, and then I'll just keep driving, and I don't know. My only problem with it though is how many times do you find a good one that you're gonna want to chase early, and then he's gone.
Yeah.
You two know this very well. Say us four guys that are further south. I mean, it seems like every single year, if not all of us, one of us is on a giant,
Yeah.
and by the time season gets here, I mean, he's gone.
Yeah, I think whether it's trail cameras, or we all love our Reveal trail cameras, and they're probably the best thing that's happened to cell cameras in a long time. I mean, they're affordable. They have a unique plan structure and that kind of stuff. Obviously, they became the highest selling trail camera on the market for a reason, but there's that catch-22 that you get into that, like, I love knowing what's out on the farm, and whether it gets you out of bed in the morning. I mean, honestly, like, you love hunting, you should probably get up anyway, but I mean, I like knowing what I'm going after. I do like that aspect of it, but it is a double-edged sword, because if you know what's out there and you're expecting, now all of a sudden you have these expectations you've put on yourself, and you're not just going out there and happy with what walks in front of you and you kill necessarily. It's like all of a sudden you're sitting there going, well, I killed my number 3 buck, or I killed my number 2 buck, but I was really, really, dead set on killing my number 1 target buck and that kind of stuff. And so it's kind of interesting that as much as I love my cameras and that kind of stuff, having those expectations that you put on yourself, we do it to ourselves, right? Like, I mean, we love those cameras. We love what they bring to our hunt and that kind of stuff. But then again, like,
You rely way too much on them.
yeah, like and I think even the critics of them give them too much credit. Like the people say, oh, using cell cams is cheating, or using cell cams is an unfair advantage. And so we've seen some states that have made some changes to their rules and their game laws, where they've outlawed them. Maybe not outright, but on public land, or they've done different things where they've removed our ability to utilize them. And I'm kind of a technology junkie. I when it comes to turkey hunting, I love, using the best, latest, greatest in turkey loads. I love using the latest, greatest in chokes and all that kind of stuff. And does it mean I'm going to kill a turkey at 80 yards? Well, maybe, but I don't go out with the intent. I go out with the intent to let them attack the decoy and call them in close. But I think so you look at the critics and people say how much it's an unfair advantage, but before I started using, I still have killed my largest deer prior to ever having, and I know not everybody on the team can say this, but my largest buck kill was a bow kill that happened in 2012. Well before, cell cams were around, but they weren't like they are now. And so, I don't know that it really, for me, it's not creating much of an advantage. I love knowing what's out there. I love having instantly, not having to go, make a trip to a farm to walk out and get the photos and stuff. I love having it come to my phone. If anything, it's a convenience way. It saves me time.
It keeps you out of there too.
But then in that way, people start to say, well, it's keeping you out of there, so you're not, so is that an advantage? Well, yeah, I guess, but you could also take a shower and spray down before you go in too. And some guys used to do that. I used to spray down for sure. Like before I walked in to get my trail cam to pull my cards and stuff like that back in 2012 and 2010, 11, 12, whatever. Back then I was I would spray down my boots. I wouldn't necessarily spray down everything, but I'd spray down my boots and that kind of stuff. I might spray down a new camera before I put it up and that kind
I
of
used to
thing.
spray everything down, including my bow.
Yeah, so did I. Yeah. And I would take a shower, go to work, and then I'd come home from work and go out for an afternoon hunt, or maybe I'd leave early, so I get into the tree for an afternoon hunt, and I would shower, spray down, bow, hair, everything, and I would go out and do that. And there's a lot of people that are like, oh, you don't need to do that. Well, you don't need to do that to kill deer. We all know that. Like, we all know that guys can go out there, and smoke cigarettes in the stand and everything else.
Take a leak out of their tree stand.
Yeah.
Still,
And still have, plenty of deer, underneath their stand, and they can kill plenty of deer. But the way I look at it, and the way I've always looked at it, is I know that I can gain an advantage if a deer can't smell me ripe. Like, there are advantages to be had, and I want to put as many of those advantages, in my favor as I possibly can. So it doesn't mean I'm not, if I can't shower, like, let's say, Zach was here earlier today and we were talking about hunting in Nebraska. Well, we were out camping and we were only able to really get one shower in a day. And I can remember Ryan, who was on that hunt with us, like, literally took a bath in a creek. Like, I mean, he soaped up and everything. Like, just jumped in, and I was like, okay. And I mean, there was a cattle tank incident that was out there. I mean, we were doing everything we could to try to stay as scent free as we could. But bottom line was, it was September while we were hunting out there, and it was hot.
a lot of sweating.
Yeah, lots of sweating. It was, 80, 90 degrees in the tree stand, and we're trying to kill velvets. And I think it was the first year that Nebraska allowed you. It used to be Nebraska opened on the 15th of September, and then they moved back to September 1st. And that first year when they went back to September 1st, it was like, okay, let's get out there. And so we did. We went out there. I think the first time I went out there was just me, Zach, and his brother Colin, and then one of Zach's buddies that was out there camping. And so we all went out there and hunted with him. And then I think me, Zach, and Ryan, I think Colin must have gone with us that one too. I think the four of us went out there and we hunted on some sort of preserve that was owned, I think, by the Fish and Wildlife Service, or maybe it was an Indian. No, I think it was, like, I don't know, it was some sort of reserve. Nature Conservancy might have actually owned it, I think, now that I think about it. But it was something more as a special draw type thing. You still had to have your out-of-state licenses, but you had to pay, like, some sort of fee in order to hunt that. But it was like public hunting. But you still had to pay a fee in order, like, almost like a park fee in order to get in there and to hunt. But and it was limited numbers, but it was still public. At least I guess it was open to the public for people to do that, and it was interesting. But the one thing I remember about both of those hunts was trying to stay scent free. So I mean, I get it, and we killed, and we weren't as scent free as we would be if we were hunting in our home state and sleeping in our own bed, every day, like we are in November. But so I mean, I don't want to, I guess, folks that maybe don't use it as often as I do or whatever, I don't want to, like, mitigate that, I guess, but I want to put all the cards in my favor, I guess. I mean,
Whether that's a cell cam. Or,
yeah, exactly.
If it's legal, I mean, it's not really cheating.
No, I mean,
It's not like you got a camera out and then as soon as the camera goes off, you're going out there and you're killing them.
And I think that's the thing. Like, I think there's maybe a perception from the non-hunting community that, like, you get it. And I mean, you could potentially get a photo of a deer. Matter of fact, that actually happened to Jake Reed and I. We were hunting last fall. We were hunting. It was raining. Remember?
Yep.
Oh man, we got cold. It was cold and miserable. It was the day after Zach killed that giant. When Zach killed his giant 210-inch deer, the thought was that I was going to go take photos, and I was going to leave as soon as I hunted. So we were going to hunt in the morning because it was looking good, and then all of a sudden I woke up and it was pouring rain, and I was like, are we going to still go? And all of a sudden, Jake's at my house, and it's like, oh, we're going to go. So we went out and sat in that and got soaked. But what happened is I got a cell cam photo, and I saw that Beamer is what we called him, but the double main beam buck that was on that farm. He wasn't really all that spectacular, other than he had that double main beam. But I don't know. We kind of went back and forth. Like, some people thought he was older, and some people thought he was only 3. So we weren't really sure if we were going to shoot him. We were going to kind of rely on whether or not we saw him on the hoof, what we thought. And I got a picture of him, and I don't know why I actually even opened it, because I don't usually check trail cam photos, but I think it was because we had not really seen anything at all up until that point. I was like, are deer even moving today? It's raining. Are deer even moving? So I flipped open the camera, because I got notification on my phone. I flipped it open to the Reveal app, and sure enough, here's Beamer walking through. And I know when that picture was taken, he would have been probably 200 yards directly east of us, and which is downhill from where we were at. And I was like, I don't know if he's going to come up here, but I told him, I was like, hey, I just got a picture of Beamer. And it wasn't 2 minutes later, I turned around and here he is walking right up a trail about 25 yards away from us. He didn't come like right underneath of us, and really didn't have an opportunity from the time I saw him to really have any kind of shot. But saw him, filmed him, and was able to look at the footage and that kind of stuff. And it was like one of those deer I wasn't sure I was going to shoot at that point in time after I'd seen him on the hoof. But Carrie was also hunting that farm with me, my wife Carrie, and it would have been a really cool deer for her to kill.
That deer's going to be sweet this year.
Yeah, I would have been really excited if she'd have got an opportunity. I saw that deer a lot. Like, he ran underneath my stand in November. Like, I heard some rustling, and I had my back. I looked back behind me, and boom, here he comes, and he's like just running full speed right at my stand, and I'm like, oh, here he comes. I didn't have a shot at him anyway, so he just ran on through and just kept right on going. I didn't call at him, didn't try to stop him, nothing, just let him keep going. But anyway, yeah, that's a good point, Drexel, of the cameras. Ty, what do you think? As far as what do you guys do in the summer months, early fall months, that really you think is a change or an advantage that you guys gain?
I think, it kind of goes off what Drexel hit on. I've been heartbroken for too many years of, getting a trail cam picture of, I don't know how many deer that we've got trail cam pictures of that are over 200 inches. And you're like, man, we're going to hunt that farm every day. We're going to kill that deer.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, September 15th comes around, and then you might get a picture of him, you might not. And I think really in all the giants that we've had pictures of, there's only been one that's actually stayed in his home area. Yeah. And that was probably more because we were in that home area. And he didn't have to go anywhere. So what I have really turned to doing is, as much as my wife says I don't like to plan, I have a great plan on what I'm going to do throughout the fall and where I'm going to hunt, what food plots I'm putting in, why this food plot's going here and why this food plot's going there, and trying to diversify. So I try to make everything to where the deer want to be there. They don't need to go anywhere. Obviously early season, like we were talking with that deer that Garrett shot was 166 inch 9-point.
Giant 9-point.
And, and then we had and then this year we had those 2 big bucks, but it seems like right there about October 1st, anywhere from September 15th to October 1st, those bucks are splitting up. They're going different directions. And so I don't put a whole lot into driving around and doing the velvet scouting. It's awesome to see those deer and just see what's around. Yeah. But, maybe in the rut, you're going to get them to run through. Yeah. But it's just, so I really do more just planning. Like, I got this plot's going to be a clover plot. This plot's going to be, I'm going to put this one the radishes or whatever for the late season. So I can kind of stair step it and hold those deer in there. I really started putting in some water tanks, just trying to do different things to make them stay. I was actually just talking to Jake earlier. He's getting ready to put in some food plots and stuff on his farm, and I was like, I've switched gears enough that I would probably do exactly different than what you're doing right now. Like, I would if I had 20 acres, I'd turn it into bedding area and try and hold everything in there and not hunt it unless you have to, and just hunt the edges, create a sanctuary so you can keep those deer there. Over the years of hunting, I've kind of changed my mentality of what I do and how I do it, and I'm always trying a different food plot or something that's going to, we've had good luck with this food plot, or like I said earlier, clover's been our hot plot, which I've killed deer on clover plots from with the girls in September, or Garrett in September when he was youth. We were killing deer early on those plots, and then I've killed them in a late muzzleloader. That clover is always, it's like the all season plot that I really love. But then trying to just bring in something different and adding different things and cutting down our food plots to where you make the deer more predictable.
Yeah.
We have kill plots, and I just kind of, which I run that as a business and trying to do that on the side anyway. So
Right.
my mind's always kicking that way.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was like, don't go too deep into this because we got a lot. Like, there's a whole laundry list of things you just listed that can be individual 1 hour podcasts with just me and you talking about stuff. Like between Ty, who's done it, for multiple years, as a business and just on his own as well, putting in food plots and doing habitat projects and all that kind of stuff. And then me on the other end of it, my day job, is very involved with, conservation and conservation management and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's literally like, I think Ty and I could talk for hours about different kinds of strategies for habitat projects and food plots and all those kinds of things. It's like, as this podcast continues to develop, probably one of the exciting things that when I first wanted to do this podcast, one of the first exciting things that I wanted to talk about was, in fact, you and I sitting down and being able to just hash out that stuff and just, have those 1 hour conversations just about all the things that we've learned over the course of, we're similar in age. Mm-hmm. We're in our 40s. So we've seen a few things. You're not 50 yet, right?
No.
I was gonna say, I know you're not. I was like, you
Man, don't make me older than I am already.
I know, right? It's like, that's how I feel too, though. It's like,
All right, Grandpa.
it's like,
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, I think I'm the oldest dude on the team, and
you are,
Yeah.
but you're not that much older than I am, though. I probably look older than you, like with all my gray hair. At least
I got pretty good. That's why I shaved my beard.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
start calling me Santa Claus.
I know, right? I'm getting there, man. I feel you.
Now, here's the thing for you, Ty. When you're trying to hold deer, do you try and hold the does or do you try and hold the bucks?
Well, where do you think your bucks are going to be in the rut?
Well, they're where the does are.
Right. So it's almost in my mind, it's very difficult to hold a buck on a farm.
Right.
The natural tendency of that buck is to go find a doe.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of things that you can do to create a better opportunity of seeing that deer. Like, if you have too many does, like I hunted a farm a few years ago, and I sat in a stand and I, no joke, counted 87 does walk out of an 80-acre CRP field.
Yeah.
Not a single buck. And then all of a sudden, 2 little bucks came up, and there were so many does that those 2 little bucks actually busted 2 of them off and bred them.
Yep.
And then I finally saw a big deer come up. Well, he already was locked down. It was like going to a strip club and you have all these, you just got your choice. You're like, let's see, which one do I want to take home right now? Because, they just have what they want,
I think a problem with them big bucks, you get some.
Full disclosure for the young guys, that isn't how a strip club works. If you go in there expecting that, you will get arrested.
Only if you go with me, that's how it works. It never works that way, don't we?
Yeah. So the thing about it, Ty's the least likely person to be caught in a strip club, so that's why it's actually funny to us. One of the things that I think that you guys hit on is you gotta that plan. So putting together that plan is really vital, and I think you talk about being motivated or setting goals, and there's a million and one different kinds of motivational phrases out there, or speeches, or whoever you got to watch, and that kind of stuff. But bottom line is it's like, create that plan, set those lists, that laundry list of things you got to get done to make sure that plan gets executed when it comes to November. It's not any different than hanging your tree stands, getting them hung well in advance of the season, knowing where you're going to plan to hunt. It doesn't mean you can't throw up one hey, I'm sitting here in the stand and I need to be there, and you can't move it in November. I'm not saying that, but if you can get in there.
Observation stand.
Yeah,
if you can remember what happened last year, if you're
Yeah.
in that tree stand, you're like, oh, last year all those bucks came to this tree, then That's what you do in August. That's when you're in there. You're moving
100%.
stuff.
Or right now.
And that exactly happened to me last year. Like that stand I ended up killing out of, it took me until November, I don't know, 26th, I think, or something like that. I know it was after Thanksgiving, and so I'm like less than a week out from gun season in Iowa starting. And everybody who hunts in Iowa knows after first gun season, bow hunting changes completely. It gets
world.
exponentially harder to bow hunt after the gun seasons get over with and you get into late December and early January because it gets paused. You can't bow hunt during gun season. And it gets paused, and then the deer get shoved all over the place, and everything's completely different. And then all of a sudden, you know, guys start late muzzleloader hunting, and some guys don't even make it back out with a bow. It's just like, okay, I'm done, because it's so hard. It's so much harder to get close to deer late in the year. And so one thing that I had happen is, and I know for a fact, Ty, you hit on it exactly, remembering what happened and where you need to move that stand. And I know that stand is still sitting in the same spot it was where I killed last year. And yeah, I was successful, but I watched for weeks deer walk by these other 3 trees that I'm sitting there going, man, if I had my stand up there, I'd have been done.
Yeah.
And Goody knows kind of roughly where I'm hunting because he filmed me the year before kill about 40 yards away from where I killed last year. But basically up the hill, Goody, from where I'm at. Like if you go up to the top of the hill, you know, and those deer didn't come when he and I hunted. They didn't come. They came from. We didn't get in there until late. Like we hadn't hunted it at all. And so then me and Goody went in there to that particular spot and hunted it. Well, I hunted it all, and I had some of the coolest hunts I've ever had. But they were observation hunts. Like the deer weren't close really. Like they weren't within bow range. And if I had to move that stand, you know, or we just would have set it somewhere else. And we thought about it. We caught me and Dennis when we were sitting there looking at it. We're like, oh, should we hang here or should we go up there? And you know, Dennis had a lot. He killed a 170 plus inch deer. The first deer he killed on that farm was in the 170s, and not far from, actually out of that same tree. It was the exact same tree that he killed out of. And that's why we hung it there. We were like, yeah, we're gonna hang it here because of the way the deer, and they do pass through that area. The problem is that when Dennis hung in that stand and he hunted in it that year, he was about 6 to 7 feet taller, and we were putting a ladder stand in that particular spot, and then a stand on the back for a cameraman. And the idea was that it was a spot that I could take Carrie to hunt, and I did. Carrie and I hunted that a lot, but I also hunted it by myself and self-filmed out of it when I wasn't hunting with her. And what ended up happening was, you know, it's just I had a lot of encounters, probably more encounters than I've had in a lot of years. And what ended up happening is that I didn't capitalize on that spot until November 28th. Had I moved that stand, and I mean, even Carrie told me, she's like, we need to be up there. That's where all the deer are. And I'm like, yeah, I know, honey. I know. I see
Thanks
that.
for bringing that up.
I see that. We need to move it up there. The problem was it was like I didn't take the time to go do it. I was in the middle of the hunting season, that kind of stuff, and I was ready to hunt. And because I didn't hunt that stand until November. So I was like,
I did that on that kill corner.
yeah,
So I shot that big 8-pointer in 2018.
yeah,
And I moved that stand, 50 yards off that corner?
yep,
And that's where I ended up killing this year. Just, you know, honing in on those spots.
Yeah, you gotta be careful with it though, because I mean, this last season, I sat on this big farm and it was all clover, luscious green clover, and I figured this pinch point right here is gonna be good. So I sat there. It was easy to get to. Well, I kept watching the same buck, and he got killed this last muzzleloader season. He was a hammer.
yeah.
What I watched this deer come out of the same spot probably 4 or 5 times, and I just never moved my stand. Well, I saw him before November
Yeah.
and the beginning of November. What I didn't know is that in the middle of November, I was going to have a 170, 180 inch deer come right in front of my trail camera, 20 yards from my stand, for 4 days in a row. And I mean, if I would have moved, what would I have done? I would have watched an even bigger deer show up
Right.
where I was.
Right.
And then I would have been like, well, what do I do now?
Well, and you make a good point too. Like, I mean, the thing. So in my case, I might have killed the deer I killed sooner, but I still killed the same deer. there was one other deer that was larger in there that I had one encounter with for one day, and the only reason why he was in there was because he was on a doe. It was November 12th. He lived on the opposite end of the farm. He didn't frequent that side of the farm. I never had trail cam photos of him there, but I had photos of him on the opposite side of the farm. It's a 300-acre farm, so it's pretty good size. And he really wasn't over there on the other side. And sure enough, what ended up happening was I saw him just at one time. Never saw him again. If I'd hunted the other side of the farm, but kind of save that. The idea was we were going to save that side of the farm for one of the other guys that hunts with us. So, there was a couple of us that had that lease, so we didn't really want to. I didn't really want to monopolize it all. I was going to stay where I kind of was, so I kind of stuck to 2 stands that Dennis and I had hung.
I think no matter what, you might as well plan on. You got to be prepared for failure.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter. They're still wild animals. I mean, like
not-
Jake
we're not
asking,
gonna
like,
predict.
what are we aiming for to hold? I mean, I'm just going to do everything I can to create the best habitat possible and make those animals be there. And, Garrett and I, we talked about that 217. We hunted that deer for 3 years. And on a Friday night, we hunted the stand that was 60 yards from where we had, I bet I have 350 trail cam pictures of that deer 60 yards from our stand. And we hunted it, didn't see him, pulled out. There was a guy sitting in the driveway across a gravel road, younger kid. We stopped, just talked to him, and, just became friends, kind of, just friendly, and said, hey, you need a ride, anything? He said, no. And then the next morning we got a picture, and it was 2 minutes before shooting light. And I said, man, we will go in there on the next south wind on Monday, and we're going to kill that deer. And so we didn't go on Sunday. We went to church, ordered pizza, and I'll never forget, man, because we were sitting there at the dinner table, and I picked my first piece of pizza up, and I was scrolling through Facebook, and I was like, hey, there's that kid that we shot. And then I looked, or that we saw hunting that farm next to us, and I went, that's our deer. Like, that's JYD. That is the dog that we called him Junkyard Dog. He lived in a junkyard full of cars. It was JYD. I'm like, that is that kid with our deer.
It
And
wasn't our
I
deer,
mean,
but
well,
the one we were chasing.
yeah,
Well, I mean,
and it was rough. Like, we're both like tearing up. I'm like, man, we've chased that deer, and we could have. I knew the guy that owned the land, and I called and I was like, man, I just want to see him. I'm not mad.
Yeah.
They're wild animals. I'm not mad, but could we just see him? And he's like, well, he's already gone. But I mean, that's turned into a blessing for us because I've been able to become good friends with that landowner, and we killed turkeys on some of his farms this year. So,
Yeah.
But I mean, no matter what you do, it doesn't matter. Even I don't care if you're going on an outfitted hunt where you're spending $6 or $8 grand to go kill a deer. It's still a wild animal, and all
Yeah.
we can really do is plan and put the best case scenario possible, and then be prepared when it doesn't work, because
Hope for a lot of luck.
that'll be just like a gut punch to you no matter
Well,
what. You can sit and watch. You can always second guess yourself, and you're like, oh, I should have moved this stand, or I should have done this, and it just,
Yeah.
the next day it could be completely different. So
And that's what I love about this group. The egos are not there.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all happy for each other. Like, Goody could come hunt my farm, shoot a 200-inch deer off of a farm that I've never shot a deer off of, and I would be so ecstatic for
Can I
him.
come shoot a 200-inch deer?
I might do it.
Hold on, let's see who invited me.
You know what I mean?
you got a
It's
200-inch deer. Oh.
it's just it's one of those things where we all have that understanding. I have a neighbor that he is allowed to hunt all the neighboring stuff. And
I think the point you're trying to make, Jake, is being happy for our fellow hunters. Like, yes. Are you discouraged? Are you kind of maybe gonna have a little bit of it's human nature to have a little bit of depression set in? Like, you've chased a deer for years. It'd been like the same thing, like for probably Goody and Ian, not so much me, but if fair game would have been killed by somebody else. Like Ian literally 2 bow seasons in a row went over because he was literally, it was that deer or nothing. Like, he was not gonna kill another deer, and he chased exclusively that deer, and he didn't fill his tag. Now, he did fill muzzleloader tags.
Yeah.
But and then he finally killed fair game with a muzzleloader. But it was one of those things that, like, we've all been there before. Matter of fact, like, one of my top target bucks last year on that farm I was hunting, which I didn't see him until late. Like it was late November that he finally started showing up because he lived on a different farm. He just would frequent our farm, especially in November. And so I remember him from last year, and we called him Split G3. But the neighbors killed him. He showed up late November. So, and then I killed my buck, late November. So like I really didn't have a chance to switch gears and start hunting him type of thing. But he showed up, and then he ended up getting killed, I think, late muzzleloader, like second or third day late muzzleloader. The neighbor shot him, which is generally where he hunted. And I wasn't really heartbroken because it's like, I mean, he wasn't a 200-inch giant like you guys were after. But I was still bummed. I was like, man, I'm like he would have been a good deer. I mean, was going to late muzzleloader hunt that farm, so I mean, I would have had potentially an opportunity at him had he not been killed. But I think no matter who it is, whether you have a relationship with the hunter across the fence or not, there's, especially in social media, there's so much probably jealousy or sour grapes or whatever you want to call it, where it's easy to sit there and be envious of what other people have. And I know us as a group, we don't do that, but I mean, the other thing I'd caution anybody against is just trying to, fight that human nature. It's human nature, like just to kind of be like, oh man, I wish I had that, or I wish I had this. But be happy for what you do have. I mean, we all live in Iowa.
Yeah.
As bow hunters, we all live in Iowa. I mean, we talked about on this
tag every year.
I mean, we draw tags every year. I mean, that's the thing. Like, and I see people joke about that and that kind of stuff. But bottom line is that we have the opportunity to wake up and every November hunt in Iowa, and have everything that we have here in Iowa, and so many other bow hunters will never experience. They will absolutely never have those kinds of, encounters and stuff like that we have, and that we probably take granted for, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just a nature of hunting in Iowa. Like we have, deer that other people don't have. And so we're fortunate, and we've, but I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I think Ian called a 160-inch deer a dink. Like on this podcast, one of the earlier episodes, like he called one of the deer he killed a dink, and it was like, dude, you just called a 160-inch deer a dink. And it's funny, and I talk about I Euro mounted my upper one. I had an upper 150s that deer I killed last year with a bow, and probably 4 years ago, if I'd have killed that deer, I probably would have shoulder mounted it. It wouldn't be my biggest ever. It isn't my biggest with a bow. I probably would have still shoulder mounted it, but now it's like it's right there on the edge. Like my next shoulder mounted deer, I want it to be a new personal best. It's just like I don't see a need to shoulder mount every deer over 150. I just, I run out of wall space. My wife's like, yeah, you've already run out of wall space.
That's like at my house. I got some friends from Alabama and New Jersey that come and hunt, and they walk by, and I have a pile of horns laying outside, and I got piles of horns in the house, and they're like, dude, what's this one score? I'm like, I don't know, like 161. You're not gonna mount it? I'm like, no, I wasn't planning on it. I'm like, it's over. I mean, we take it for granted. That was something like we were talking on the way up here today. Drexel was, talking about maybe going to Kansas and doing an outfitted hunt, or finding hunting public out there, not outfitted, but I'm like, man, I can't get excited about going to another state to hunt whitetails, because we're in one of the best states, and you have the best whitetail. Like, what excites me is like going antelope hunting or going to an elk hunt or something like that. But and I've told Garrett from the time he was growing up, I'm like, you don't understand what you have.
No.
Like to be, and I tell my girls that, I'm like, we can take you out and put you on 150-inch deer every night.
Yep.
And and I'm like, that's not even. There's people in Iowa that don't have that ability.
Right.
But to go from some of these people that live down south, and they're just not that caliber of deer around, and that.
And there probably won't ever be. It's not. It's not necessarily. It's not necessarily a game regulation thing. Like you can't regulate it. Like I mean, I think it's Mississippi has like a point restriction or something
Missouri
like that.
does too.
Missouri does.
Yeah.
Yeah, Missouri does, and I mean that's where all the small deer are.
Right. I mean, yeah.
I mean, there's things that
Drexel
they could
making fun of his home
Dude,
state.
Dude, I hate hunting that state.
All right, come on
people
now.
that-
Let's not hate on other states.
Well, hey,
We
I
love you,
live
Missouri.
there. I live there.
I know.
I have that right.
And one of the things that I think makes them, there are regulation things that do impact them, like gun seasons during the rut.
Yeah.
Definitely is going to impact your age class because you're going to have deer that get killed that otherwise wouldn't be killed if you didn't have guns, shooting. And so I think that's probably what you're leading towards when it comes to Missouri.
If they would just push that gun season to December, like what Iowa's got.
Yeah.
I mean,
It would make a difference. Now, the one problem you run into is that it's the reason why there's so much of a fight to keep gun season out of our November. And there's people that are pushing for it in Iowa. They want to see, you be able to do what you do in Missouri. But it's cultural. Like culturally, we don't do that. It's just the way it's set up. It's the way it's always been in Iowa. So culturally, it's trying to change, like if they were to pass, they'll never pass a law that doesn't allow party hunting. Because in Iowa, shotgun party hunting is like,
way of life.
it's a way of life. It's like some guys will hunt first season shotgun and it's the only 3 days they'll hunt Saturday, Sunday, and maybe Monday. And it's the only 3 days that they hunt a year. And they're probably farmers that have some interest in hunting and that kind of stuff. But I actually hunted with those guys. Like I hunted with, that's where I started. My first deer hunts were party hunting, shotgun hunting. So it's tradition. They were born and raised that way. They were brought up that way. And it may be the only time they might go opening weekend of pheasant season because it's cultural and pheasant hunting's always, was born and bred into us in Iowa. It used to be our big thing before deer were a big thing in Iowa. And now not so much, but the pheasants are making a nice comeback. But bottom line is that when you get into that kind of stuff, it's like it's hard to legislate that because there will be backlash. So lawmakers might have enough support to make some of those changes. The backlash could be detrimental, and so they understand that and that kind of stuff. So there might be certain people that want to lobby. And I know there's been a lobby out there for the last couple of years pushing hard to get crossbows into archery season. It's a hard push. I know there's views on each side of it and that kind of stuff. If it was legal, I wouldn't use one. I don't have any desire to. But there would be people that did, and that's fine. Like I really don't. If it's legal, but Nebraska, it's legal to use a crossbow out there. Does it dramatically change the landscape of their bow season or archery season? Probably not. But you're also talking about a lot different landscape too than what we have in Iowa. But anyway, all right, let's get back on topic, though, so we can finish, round this out. So, Garrett, you're up next.
Yeah, I would say, like, what Dad said with building a plan, just, like, overall,
Yeah.
and what we want to do going into it. And, like, last year, I picked up a pretty big piece, and my wife was pregnant, and my daughter was born on October 2nd, which is really awful timing if you do archery hunt early in October.
You can't always time miracles.
Right. So I knew, like, I spent a lot of time e-scouting on, like, my hunt stand.
Yeah.
Like, I spent a lot of time just looking, like, even on farms that we hunt now, I would just go take every single pin off of that farm and just, like, look at it as a whole, break it down, like, really just try to go back to the basics of, like, even, like, past experiences are very important.
Yeah.
But, like, even just breaking it down to, like, the simple first look.
Right.
And then kind of using that, and as you hunt it, I mean, you know of previous years what to do too, but, like, just breaking it down, finding those hard pinch points. Like, I was gonna hunt a lot in early November, like when the deer were running. That was my time to get out. So.
Yeah, and you bring a really good point. Like the fact that we have that's another technology thing, but Hunt Stand is amazing with what the different tools they have. I mean, Drexel actually mentioned it to me today. Like we were just out shooting our bows. All of us were as a team, and he's like, man, Hunt Stand is one of those tools that we don't talk enough about how valuable it is to us. And then then I don't even sometimes like dig into it. Like you start to really look through it and what it all offers. There are a ton of stuff. Like I know, like speaking of new farms, like so I have a new lease this year. Don't know anything about it. Never hunted it. I know it's got good deer on it, but I've never hunted it, so I don't really know. So what did I do? I went back and I looked and see where the food plots were previous years, because they have on HuntStand they have the monthly imagery. Now it's not high def, so you can't like zoom in and see like crystal clear, resolution like you're used to on Google Earth and that kind of stuff. You can see old imagery if you want through different places to find high def, but it's probably taken most of the USDA's imagery, which is what Google Earth uses. Most of the USDA's imagery that we use is taken in July or August, depending on where they're flying that imagery, because it's actually high definition flown from an airplane. It's high definition flown from an airplane, and it is then stitched together. So they're photographs, and then it's all stitched together into this imagery layer. And so HuntStand uses that for their main imagery, and you can zoom in and see some crystal clear, really nice, stuff. But it's a snapshot from whenever that plane happened to be overhead. But then if you look at that monthly imagery, that's satellite imagery, and so that's the reason why it's not as high def, is because it's coming off a satellite that passes over once a month and takes that photo. And so to my knowledge, they're the only ones that offer that in the different apps that are out there. HuntStand's the only one that offers that, and you can go to that monthly imagery and you can look back in several years, since I think it's been 2 or 3 years now that they've had that, and you can look back month to month to month. You can actually even see snow cover. So if you're interested to know, like, where if we had a snowpack. So in southern Iowa, we don't always have a snowpack. Very rarely, I would say, do we have a snowpack that lasts for a couple weeks, which is different than you get into like northern Iowa, and they might have a snowpack for 2 or 3 months. Well, that definitely changes the nutrition that's available to animals, whether it's turkeys. Like you'll hear of winter kill of turkeys when you get into northern climates, especially Wisconsin. Wisconsin, they actually expect winter kill out of their turkey population. Iowa, not so much, because we get, we're lower longitude. Is that right? Yeah. So we're lower there than they are in most of the part of Wisconsin. So we might have some winter kill. We obviously have some winter kill on quail and pheasants that happens. But we don't see it as much in our bigger animals and that kind of stuff, especially not in deer, but they do get impacted. Like we talk about antler growth and maximizing antler growth. One of the biggest things that affects antler growth is when that deer comes out of winter, what is their body condition in? When they're going to start growing antlers, are they behind at all? Because, and they're going to devote whatever available energy they have in their body, fat sources, whatever the case may be, towards antler growth over those next summer months. And coming out of the winter healthy, not only just healthy, but maybe having extra available energy, is the difference between them. It could be tens of inches, like it could be 10 or 20, 30 inches difference if they're wore down versus coming out in really good health. That's where there's that debate about the supplemental feeding. Whether or not you think that it can lead to different diseases and that kind of stuff. But really, when it comes to winter supplemental feeding, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to keep them healthier, that kind of stuff. So when we're feeding rack fuel out of our, Boss Buck feeders, the idea there is to enhance that available energy and provide better antler growth. Is it worth it? Is it minimalized? I'm sure there's scientific studies out there that dive into that kind of stuff, because in the deer farming industry where they grow deer for that's kind of where that comes into play. Like they actually have done the research and that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's e-scouting, if you want to call it. I think that's an amazing tool that probably, we've used Hunt Stand how many years? Like 4 or 5 years now.
At least 5.
Yeah, we've been involved with Hunt Stand since really the inception, because we were with Scout Look before that, and Hunt Stand purchased Scout Look. So that's kind of how our involvement came to be with them, and yeah, I mean they do some really cool things, and that tool, like, dig into it. Like, you can even pull up like soils, like on your food plots, and just get an idea. Like, it doesn't replace the need to necessarily do soil tests, but it can give you an idea, like whether or not it's well drained or whether or not it's a heavier soil. And knowing that, you can look on any food plot mix out there, and it's going to tell you if it does good in well drained or moderately drained soils. And that's going to tell you, like, if it's a muck, heavy soil, like, and it's supposed to be in a well drained soil, you probably don't want to plant it there. So I mean, it'll tell you at least that soil type, and it'll kind of give you a little breakdown about what that is.
Big clay knob on top of a hill.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. It's like, yeah. I mean, there's things to know. I mean, and it does provide that for you. All right, Goody, you're last up. You're the last man standing.
I think in looking back on it in more recent years, the things I focus on are my kids are old enough to hunt, so getting them trigger time, kind of showing them. We'll pull up diagrams of deer and point out your good shots where you don't want to shoot, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And aside from that, for myself, is predator management.
Yeah.
And I mean, we focus a lot on land management, so your food plots, bedding areas, all that stuff. And I think just as important is getting rid of coyotes, bobcats, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. I mean, I got my first fawn, dead fawn, coyote carrying a dead fawn last year, and I mean, you don't. Yeah, I guess I didn't give coyotes enough credit for as many deer as they kill. Yeah, I mean, I guess I always thought, of them being more of a hit, taking more of a hit, or putting more of a hit on, game birds, turkeys, that kind of stuff. Maybe smaller game. I didn't realize, maybe how often they take down fawns, especially the young fawns. I mean, obviously, once they get to be a certain age, it's a little harder, unless it takes multiple, might take a whole group of coyotes. But one coyote by itself could pretty easily take out a small fawn that's young. I mean, one of those early born, barely walking type things. It doesn't take much to take them out. So that's a good point. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. And you're kind of our predator guy. He's the one with Goody's the gun guy. He's the one of the group that's got all the toys when it comes to the suppressors and the thermals and all that stuff. So, like, we'll have to do some podcasts specifically with Goody about that stuff and kind of what he's learned through his journey of thermals and podcasts, or thermals and suppressors, and we'll get some podcasts going that way too, because I don't know anything about that stuff. I mean, I've shot a few guns with suppressors on them just because my father-in-law has one and you have one, so I've shot those guns and that kind of stuff. But I think they're cool and that kind of stuff. I really appreciate it because I mean, I have some definite hearing loss in my left ear from shooting guns, and that goes back to shooting trap as a kid, in high school and that kind of stuff. I didn't shoot on a trap team like your daughter does, but I shot just with my buddies out in the backyard and that kind of thing. And I know I do. I mean, it just if there's background noise, if I'm at work or like I'm trying to talk and there's somebody else or something else going on in the background, that kind of stuff, it's hard for me to actually make out, especially if it's like a low talker. Seinfeld joke. Like Drexel's looking at like, who's Seinfeld? Legit, like Drexel just looked at me like, who's Seinfeld? Like, Ty knows what's up. Anyway,
that was before their time.
it was before their time.
It's an old guy thing.
Yeah, right. It's like making old dad jokes. I am the.
That was back when TV shows were good.
Like back when they were actually TV shows and you didn't pull up on Netflix.
Back when your hair wasn't gray.
My hair's been gray since I've been a junior, bro. Like, I mean,
I don't know, man.
not as gray as it is. The children and have contributed to it.
He did have a lot more of it, I bet.
Yeah, I had a lot more hair. That's right. Yeah, it's fallen out very quick. I got more hair than Zach Geeth has, and probably Reed. But
Hey man,
You should've
mine's
heard
by
Danica
choice.
The first time we watched one of the old episodes,
what's that?
when me and Danica, I
Yeah.
sat down, we were watching one of the older Victory episodes,
Yeah.
and it was one of yours, and camera pans over to you, and she's like, "Who's that?" So that's Kurt. No, it's not. Your beard was black, I think.
Yeah.
You know, and it was full color and everything. She's like, "There's no way." It's like, that's
Yeah, that's him.
What happens when you mature? We're not
Yeah.
gonna call it get old. We're just gonna call it mature.
So I always, kind of looked at my dad, but I will say this, like, about the same age that I am. So my dad's hair, I kind of always remember it being gray, and so my hair, I was born when he was 30, so that time I really have, kind of a running memory of what I remember. I mean, he's still alive, so, but when he had hair, because he's completely bald now, but when he had hair, it's very reminiscent of what mine looks like now. So it's like I kind of know where I'm going. Like, I'll just hold on to it as long. And then, like, what he did is he called it the stripe of shame. So basically, like just around the so you got the friar tuck going on. So you got bald up on top, and then only the stripe of shame around the sides. So when he went to that, he shaved it completely. So he just went to the whole cue ball, shaved it, and that's the way he rocks it currently. He's 73, so I'll be 43, and he's good, doing good and healthy and everything. So we're just kind of keep praying that he stays healthy. But yeah, he's bald, real bald. So that's where my
We can all
future's
laugh,
going.
but they're gonna get to that point where we are right now, where your eyebrow hair and your ear hair grows faster than any other hair in the world.
Absolutely.
You're like,
Absolutely.
man, I just trimmed my eyebrows yesterday. Now they're 7 inches long.
I know I'm not worried about my eyebrows, but my ear hair is ridiculous. It's like I'm about to trim my ear hair as much as I
Or your
trim my
nose
beard.
hair, you just comb it over because you ain't got no hair on top.
Nice. Yeah. And no offense, Drexel, but I've seen your hair. It's not.
Yeah, you ain't got no room to top. You're on the downhill
say-
slope for
It's
sure.
few and far between.
Yeah, you got it. It's okay now, but you're in your early 20s, so you just go ahead and hang on to it for as long as you got it, and you probably better do something about that girlfriend that's hanging around and keep her locked down, because she's gonna have to love you when you're bald. So
Bald and beautiful, they say. I guess.
yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't wait too many more years if you plan on sticking that out for the long
Hey, man.
haul. I'm just.
Is that a dig there?
It's not, I mean, it's
Well,
a
we're
fact.
paying-
It's a fact,
peer
brother.
pressure worked on you.
Yeah, it did.
It
So-
took 8 years though. So
Yeah, but you didn't know
He
us
kept
for
his
8
hat on the
years.
whole time.
You didn't know us for 8 years.
that's true.
He never took his hat off.
Never took his hat off. That's what got Courtney. She didn't
Yeah.
know.
Never take the hat or the boots off.
Okay, we can go so many more wrong directions.
Yeah,
That
okay.
we should probably wrap it now on that. We should probably wrap it.
Before we got too far south.
Yeah, before this conversation goes south, she's in the building, so we don't want to get Jake in trouble. But anyway, hey guys, I appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening that are out there. We're going to continue to keep firing up these podcasts, do a little better job than we did here the last couple of months. We had a lot of people reach out to us and ask what happened to the podcast, and it was simply more of a technical error on the service that we were using. So we made some changes. We believe we've got it all figured out now. We're still going to continue to bring in those guests that we were doing. We brought in some really cool guests for you guys. We're going to continue to have those conversations, and then we're going to expand like we kind of talked about today. Goody can lend some stuff about what he's learned on the gun side of things. Ty is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the habitat side of things. And all of us, the entire team, young and seasoned, I call us seasoned instead of old, young and seasoned alike, have a lot of experience that we've had, whether it's behind the bow or behind the camera, and what we do here at Victory Outdoors. So look forward to the upcoming season and our weekly episodes. So check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Victory Outdoors. You can also find us on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and thanks for listening.